We will do projects only in partnership with Indigenous peoples.
I want folks to know they have a choice. You can have hope.
Tonight, Liberal leader Mark Carney and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh make a stop in Saskatchewan.
First, it was just, I was shocked at first, and then it turned into more anger.
Two Mi'kmaq leaders step down after a private group chat is exposed to the public. We'll tell you what was said.
There wasn't a lot of heavy endorsing going on. It was more so the advocating for First Nations rights.
And our Truth in Politics panel breaks down that recent meeting between First Nation leaders in Alberta and the Conservative Party leader. Tanse, good evening. I'm Kristen Achkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Liberal leader Mark Carney and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh were looking for votes in Saskatoon on Wednesday night, in a province where the Assembly of First Nations says there are 5 ridings that could be won by First Nation voters. The Liberals and NDP are pushing for a strong turnout from them. APTN's Rachel May was at both events.
The Assembly of First Nations just released a report showing that Saskatoon West is one of 36 ridings made up of enough Indigenous people that they could shift the entire vote.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh visited Saskatoon West candidate Rachel Lowen-Walker at her office last night to rally support. While Indigenous issues weren't directly addressed, Singh urged voters to consider the NDP as a party that supports people at the grassroots level.
And I want folks to know they have a choice. You can have hope. You can have someone that's going to fight for you, not the billionaires, not the CEOs, someone that's going to cap grocery prices to bring them down, ban corporations from buying affordable homes, invest in our healthcare, expand pharmacare, lift people up. That's us.
Liberal leader Mark Carney was at the Remy Art Gallery to speak to Liberal supporters. He said he wants to make Canada an oil and gas superpower, working in full partnership with Indigenous communities.
We will do projects only in partnership with Indigenous peoples. Only in partnership with First Nations. Only in partnership with the provinces. And only in ways that gives back to the people of Canada.
Liberal candidate for Desnethi Missinippi Churchill River, Buckley Belanger, spoke about the importance of Indigenous participation in elections.
And it's more important to have Indigenous representation and being active in politics. Why? Why is it important now? It's because our water is ours. Our land is ours. This country is ours.
Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Now to the East Coast, where a private group chat has recently been exposed on social media. 2 Mi'kmaq councillors of the Millbrook First Nation have now resigned, and women are speaking out about the contents of the chat. APTN's Angel Moore reports, and a warning. Some of the details in this story may be triggering and disturbing.
First, it was just, I was shocked at first, and then it turned into more anger, then it was more sad, and then it was just pure disgust after seeing that.
That is Jackie McNutt's reaction after she saw a private chat group posted on Facebook. The comments are graphic and sexually demeaning towards female community members. Here's just a few examples. Gotta marry one or kill one. Passed out sex is the best, eh? When they're passed out. The chat group has about 18 members from the Millbrook First Nation, including 2 councillors, staff, and business owners. Millbrook First Nation councillors Garrett Glode and Pius Knockwood abruptly resigned from their positions after they were exposed as participating in the chat group. Neither Knockwood or Glode could be reached for comment. McNutt is a mother of 3 young children and expecting another. She and her relatives were talked about in the chats.
It not only hurt me, it hurts my sister, and it hurt my niece and my mom to read all these. And you know, she never knew anything about this stuff, and other than what happened to me, and it broke my mother. So
Tia Gugu claims a friend showed her the chats, including comments about her and her mother.
Disgusting, appalling, degrading. I don't think any man should really talk like that at all, especially about women. Like, Indigenous men are supposed to be our protectors and not our predators, you know.
Gugu says she told Millbrook leadership before she posted screenshots of the chats on Facebook, which have over 2,000 shares.
The more you let your stories out and be heard, the more we can shut these predators down.
However, Gugu has been accused of obtaining the chats by force, which she says is not true when asked by APTN News. RCMP say they are investigating that complaint about the use of force, plus an ongoing investigation into the chats themselves to see if anyone has been victimized criminally. Chief Bob Glode of the Millbrook First Nation posted a statement on Monday. I am deeply disturbed by these messages that are demeaning and disparaging towards women, men, elders, and 2S LGBTQIA+ population. I want to assure you that this type of behavior is not acceptable, and it's not a reflection of our leadership or community as a whole. This situation is being taken very seriously, and there will be formal and swift consequences. At the Nova Scotia Native Women's Association in Millbrook, the Resiliency Centre opened its doors to offer support. Sunshine Peter Paul is president of the Millbrook Women's Club. She was contacted by women named in the chats and is working to ensure people have access.
Be it counseling or talking circle, go to healers, putting in a victim impact statement, even if they wanted to go through the RCMP or just call helpline, I wanted them to know that there were supports here.
McNutt says she and her family have made statements to the RCMP and encourages others to speak out so justice can be served.
these guys, like, they got to live with this for the rest of their lives, whether they care about it or not. Maybe they feel guilty, but the only reason that they feel guilty is because they got caught. They wouldn't, because it would still be just happening if those messages were not leaked.
The Nova Scotia RCMP said in an email to APTN News, there is an ongoing investigation and cannot provide any further information at this time. If anyone needs support, please call Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Millbrook First Nation, Nova Scotia.
A program designed to end violence against women while helping Indigenous men reconnect with their culture is seeing some successful outcomes. The Sault Ste. Marie Indigenous Friendship Centre is one organization in Ontario that is providing the program. As APTN's Mike McDonald reports, it provides men with a safe place to begin understanding their role and responsibility in ending violence.
The program is called Kije Anishinaabe, which in English means I am a kind man. Men who have participated in the program come from different walks of life. Some have spent time in jail. Program coordinator Corey McLeod says most of the men who participate have little to no understanding of their culture.
So the men come out of the jail, come out of penitentiary, and they learn about who they are, where they come from, and they start to learn the teachings that they never got to learn at the beginning of their lives, usually is the case, and they seem to take the cultural right in and start to learn to how to treat themselves and how to treat other people.
The program begins with teachings focused on traditional medicine and how to properly use it.
I have someone come in, cultural person, to come in and teach the medicine to these men, and the men have those tools right off the bat for when they're starting to deal with the program. Program is kind of demanding with the culture, so you start learning the 7 grandfather teaching is probably the meat and potatoes of that, or the moose and the potatoes of that program.
Calvin Harper is a recent graduate of the program. He says Kije Anishinaabe has helped him to find himself and to acknowledge and resolve trauma.
It was recommended from my parole officer, actually. I was dealing with some charges, and they're all dealt with now, but I'm actually glad it was recommended. It really taught me a lot about trauma, a lot of trauma that I have to deal with. Before, I just thought trauma made you stronger, but it really it's something that you have to deal with and recognize that it's there. Before, I thought, oh, I just made you a stronger man, but there's a lot of effects that it can do to you.
Harper says he continues to reflect on his time in the program and would recommend it to anyone who was in his position when he entered it.
It really helped me with day-to-day life experiences. There's a lot that I still think of and reflect on during this program when I was in it.
Kije Anishinaabe is a 12-week program and includes one-on-one counseling and support, peer circles, and group-based programming. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
Thank you, Mike. Our new Truth in Politics panel is up next. Plus, we continue to profile ridings where Indigenous voters could make an impact on who will be sitting in Canada's 45th Parliament. Here's a preview of a story airing next week from Northwestern Ontario.
Tansa, I'm TR Wheatley here in downtown Kenora. We're here right now to talk federal election. This, of course, is the Kenora-Kiiwetinoong riding.
Love you, Tanya!
There are 6 candidates here. We're hoping to talk with some of them.
People always wonder why an independent. I just don't like party policies.
I was hoping to talk with the incumbent Eric Malillo.
Okay, and is this the best number to reach you at?
And then talk to people in general just to see what they have to say about this federal election.
That would be really positive instead of negative.
Really done some Alabama style voter suppression.
Welcome back. Natural resources are one of the major issues in this federal election, mostly because U.S. President Donald Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs on goods imported from Canada. The topic of oil and gas have also come up when Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre recently met with some chiefs in Edmonton during a meeting hosted by the Indian Resource Council. And social media photos of that meeting posted earlier this week went sideways, with band members calling it an endorsement they do not support. Our Truth in Politics panel is here to wade into the controversy. Jennifer Leywitz is the CEO of Pasquale Harbour Strategies, and Neegon Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Jennifer and Neegon, welcome back. Jennifer, it's your turn to start us off this week. What are your thoughts on the meeting between First Nations and Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre that happened earlier this week?
Obviously, I'm going to be entering my thoughts into a pool of thoughts that are currently happening right now. And I publicly came out on record yesterday to say that I actually agreed with the meeting, and that might surprise a lot of people. But I think of it more on the other side, where people are automatically thinking that this is an endorsement and maybe the political party is utilizing that to their advantage. But more so, I think people should look at this as a responsibility. I think every single one of these federal political party leaders has a responsibility to meet with our chiefs and figure out what their priorities are and figure out what it is that they want to advance in the next government. You know, I have been in rooms like this, and I actually was in that room last week during that meeting with one of the chiefs that I'm an advisor to. And I can tell you right now that there wasn't a lot of heavy endorsing going on. It was more so the advocating for First Nations rights. And I think when we automatically turn to attack our leadership that are in those rooms trying to do what is best for their communities, we forget and we almost downplay the advocacy that they do by automatically assuming that they're endorsing a political party when they're actually there to have those tough conversations. And I would welcome those same opportunities with, you know, Mark Carney or Jagmeet Singh. And I can say that on our end, requests have been sent to those political party leaders, but it's up to their campaigns to actually take on those requests.
Neegon, should chiefs and First Nation leaders in the resource sector not be meeting with those running for Prime Minister?
I almost am shocked that this is a question. And I think back to the kind of ways in which, back in the days of I Don't Know More, there was a kind of moment in which the most conflict was happening with Stephen Harper's government. Stephen Harper's government was very aggressive on resources and particularly denying Indigenous rights and cards on the table. I was an activist in those days, and so I was really not very pleased in the way Stephen Harper treated our nations. And there was a special meeting that was held in which chiefs were invited to meet with the Prime Minister to talk about some of the conflicts that were happening, the omnibus legislation, particularly around lands and resources. That's a conversation you have to have, not just with the Prime Minister, but everyone that's going to work in government. Everybody, every party, even the Bloc Québécois, even the, if it was ever the People's Party of Canada, you have to have conversation, and it is Indigenous nations in which those conversations are run. Now, zoom back to what actually happened. What Stephen Harper said was that I'm going to handpick who's going to be at that meeting. I'm going to tell you which chiefs are going to be located, or they say, oh, the AFN can only pick X number of chiefs. That's when things get mucky. That's when things get murky, is when Canadian parties dictate to Indigenous peoples the terms of the meeting, why the meeting is happening. And even, Justin Trudeau would oftentimes get into trouble, one of the most progressive prime ministers we've ever had in history for First Nations, Inuit, Métis people, because he would come into meetings and oftentimes tell people what the agenda is going to be. You don't get to run the show. A partnership is a partnership is a partnership. And when you work with First Nations, Inuit, Métis leaders, you have to listen as much as you speak. And so I think it's good that we have conversations, especially around resource development, where we have the most amount of conflict. We need to not shut each other out of rooms. We need to be in more rooms together.
And Jennifer, you wanted to weigh in on the comments on the photos. At last check, there were almost 2,000 comments and another 2,000 shares, overwhelmingly negative. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, obviously a lot of the comments are negative, and I've seen some comments where people are even calling our First Nations chiefs sellouts and apples, and even going so far as to call them waste of skin. I'll be very blunt in the fact that I think that's absolutely disgusting, and I won't move on that opinion. I took an undergraduate in political science, which was not something that was very popular for First Nations people to do, especially as a young woman. But at the end of the day, I had this harsh reality that no matter what, because we're in that nation-to-nation relationship, everything the federal government does affects us. And that is, at the end of the day, the cold, hard reality. Pierre Poilievre is the leader of Canada's Conservatives. First Nations alone did not put that man in that position. He is the official opposition leader, and Canadians chose him to be there because of the way that he was voted in. So we are the ones that are now stuck dealing with him, but we get to face the backlash when we just deal with the systems that we have been handed that were never designed for us. And, you know, when things like the water legislation come into play, I remind people the opposition's role is to hold the government accountable. When there are big pieces of legislation on the table, like the water legislation, you want your opposition to be critical of legislation that's there, because that's what holds the government accountable. So it is important for our First Nations chief to meet with every political party, because they, like Nigon said, they have influence in every levels of government. So unfortunately, we've been past these leaders, we've been past these systems, and we have to deal within it. But what I will remind Indigenous people, and not to sound too paternalistic, is that when we tear our own people down and we do it very publicly, we are making that extremely comfortable for non-Indigenous people to do. Because when they see us fighting and they see us doing it, they think that it's okay. And I'm not going to sit here and tear down leadership for doing what they think is best, especially with the historical context of, you know, these systems that are super oppressive, were never designed for us, but now we get to deal with them.
We're going to continue this conversation on our Truth in Politics podcast. Thank you both for chatting with us today.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Photo of the day and weather is up next. Plus, we have a preview of what's coming up on APTN's Nation to Nation. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Time now for our photo of the day. Today's picture comes from our APTN Yellowknife reporter Bruce Dela Cruz, who captured this stunning shot of the Aurora Borealis over Yellowknife last week. Bruce says the fact that he was able to see the northern lights in the heart of downtown Yellowknife was an incredible experience. Just make sure to not whistle at them, Bruce. Send us your photos to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east, Charlottetown 6, St. John's 8. -5 in Nain, Happy Valley, Goose Bay 1. Saguenay 7, Quebec City rain and 8. Rain in Toronto at 6, Peterborough 6. Sunny in Elliott Lake at 11, Wawa 9. Churchill -2, rain in Thompson at 8. 15 in Gimli, Winnipeg 15. North Battleford 18, Yorkton 9. Buffalo Narrows 9, Meadow Lake 20. Grand Prairie 11, Fort McMurray 10. 17 in Calgary, Red Deer 16. 16 in Kamloops, Campbell River 10. 7 in Fort Nelson, Dees Lake 5. -1 in Old Crow, Mayo 5. 3 in Yellowknife, Norman Wells 2. Sax Harbor -5, Pawlatuck -5. -3 in Whale Cove, Arviat -4. And Iqaluit -6, Clyde River -11. It's Thursday, and that means Fraser Needham joins us now from Ottawa to tell us what's ahead on this week's Nation to Nation. Fraser?
Coming up after the evening news, Indigenous communications expert Cam Holmstrom is here to give us his thoughts on how the 2025 federal election campaign is going. Also, pollster Keto Maggie also drops by to talk about why some Indigenous voters are still sticking with the NDP in this campaign, while many of the party's non-Indigenous supporters have flocked to the Liberals. And we talked to the CEO of the Somerset West Community Health Centre about why the organization has decided to shut down its supervised consumption site, even though they have a court injunction that says they don't have to. All this in just a few minutes on Nation to Nation.
Thank you, Fraser. And that's your evening newscast for this Thursday, April 10th. Longtime comedian Don Burnstick will join us for tomorrow's APTN National News daytime show at 12 p.m. Winnipeg time. Please join us then. From our reporting staff from across the country and from our studio in downtown Winnipeg, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again. Ekse.